Hello, fully online class. I know that you signed up for this course because you want to learn about writing, and I've got some really strong opinions about writing, how it should be taught, and how we should conduct ourselves as writers. But to repeat myself, for a while here, I'm going to be training you rhetorically with training that I got in my 2 incarnations as a graduate student. So for a few lessons here, I'm going to be talking about the Greeks and everything that they've taught me to give you a kind of a rhetorical stance for thinking about writing, and not only that, but thinking about living in the world. There's a bit of a mess behind me here. I'm painting my guest house, and we're going to go in there in a minute, and I'll do a little bit of teaching, and hopefully you'll do a little bit of learning. I'm trying to provide some different backgrounds behind me to make this as interesting as possible. Nothing could be more boring than a middle-aged man sitting at a desk ranting about rhetoric and literature, so I'm just trying to get some different settings going here. It occurs to me, too, that for my online students in the spring, my fully online students who are watching this video, it's going to be a little bit of a strange experience. I don't intend to remake all of these videos, and when you upload this or watch it on my YouTube channel in January, it's probably going to be 20 below. Stranger still is that as I film these across the fall, the leaves are going to be turning in beautiful colors. They'll get on the ground eventually and fall down where they belong on the ground. And while the weather is sort of degrading here as fall turns into winter, your spring is going to be coming on. So the material's all the same. The stuff I'm going to be talking about with you today, along with all the things I'll be talking to you about in the days and weeks ahead, it's as ancient, it's as old as these hills here in Collegeville where I live. So what I'd like to do today is help you understand the origins of rhetoric a little bit. Rhetoric was defined in the 1930s by a guy named I.A. Richards as the thing that would remedy misunderstandings. I.A. Richards also said that any discipline that has as its concern the remedying of misunderstandings need not apologize for itself. Cicero, meanwhile, many centuries before that, said that rhetoric is a good person speaking well. And Aristotle quite famously said 5 centuries BCE that rhetoric is the art or the faculty of observing in any case the available means of persuasion. Come on to my guest house with me for a while and give you a little more background. I'm lucky enough down here to have 2 wonderful places to work. You're going to see a few lessons filmed here in my little guest house that overlooks my lake. I also got a little glass porch over there, and probably film a few of these rhetoric and composition lessons over there. It's kind of a cozy and quiet place to work, and it's a good place to think. I was up at, and yes, I drink out of a mason jar. I want you to know that. You know, I was up at in my face-to-face classes, my 2 Comp 1 classes at Central Lakes College last week, and I tried to create a few scenarios to help them think about rhetoric. In the first one, I imagined them to think about 2 young men years ago, you know, early Crow Wing County. One of them comes out of the woods and he's got an apple. Another young man comes out of the woods across a meadow, so to speak, and he's starving. And then I said to my Central Lakes College students, what happens next? Some of them said, you know, they share the apple. Every time I've done this, the example goes to violence, and one young man raised his hand and said that, well, there's probably a fight over the apple. If there is a fight, that's not rhetoric. That's violence. That's tyranny. It's one person oppressing another. However, if the person without the apple says, hey, I observe you have an apple. I know where some raspberries are growing over there by the Mississippi River. How about if you share the apple with me, I show you where the raspberries are, we'll have a balanced diet, and we'll evolve. Now that's rhetoric. I also conjured a second example, and it is an example that is a little bit personal to all of us. You knew what rhetoric is. You knew what persuasion is before you were even born. As William Faulkner famously says in his novel Light in August, memory believes before knowing remembers. I want to take you all back to maybe a summer afternoon many, many years ago when you were a little bitty baby. It went like this. You woke up in the afternoon after a long nap. You had a couple of situations going on. Number 1, you were hungry. Number 2, your diaper was full of poo. You were upset and you yelled, you cried. And when you cried, someone came in and took care of you. Probably a beautiful woman, namely your mom. She came in, changed your diaper, made sure you got something to eat and drink, and life was good for a little while until you woke up, tired, up, upset, hungry, with your diaper full of poo again. Babies poop and pee 2,000 times in the first 10 months of life. When you were that little baby, you were learning that the world was rule-governed, and if you ask the world to do something for you, it just might do it. If you act on the world, it will act back. Poke at the world and it will poke back. You were a rhetorician even though you were 6 months old and you didn't even know it. Much more importantly, after giving you kind of a prehistoric example, maybe a personal example to you, is the real true story of rhetoric's beginning. 8 centuries BCE, on the wind-swept, hot island of Syracuse in Greece, there was a man named Corax of Syracuse. His island was taken over by a tyrant, and the tyrant, like many leaders, wanted history to begin with him, so he trashed all the public records. Well, he went the way of all tyrants. Peasants rose up against him and killed him. And there was just chaos because none of the farmers in this little agrarian scene knew who owned what. This is 8 centuries before law as a profession had even been invented. And these farmers had to sort of appeal before the proverbial court, tribunal of elders, right? You know what? They kind of sucked at it. They weren't very good at it. They didn't know how to argue from causes. And Corax, an enterprising man who could read and write, said, you know what? I'm going to teach these farmers how to argue cases. Whenever I tell this story, I imagine Corax doing it down by the ocean. I don't know why. I imagine the peasants, the farmers sitting on rocks, and Corax standing there all wrapped in a sheet, a toga, saying to them, okay, when you get in there, when you get into the court, say this, act in this way, gesture in this way, and you just might get your land back. It's the real, true, heartwarming story of the beginning of rhetoric. It's in every rhetoric textbook. The story of a guy who taught people how to speak and write well, to speak and write eloquently. They did well in the public sphere. Corax made a buck, or drachma, we would say, in the bargain. And 3 centuries later, I got to tell you this, rhetoric was the only thing being studied by young men in Athens. Rhetoric was largely invented for bureaucrats because the Greeks knew that if you could walk into a room and speak well, you could have political power. I just hope that you're interested in the same.